Hello and welcome to Reprogram Your Mindset for Winning with Well. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today for this subject on reprogramming your mindset. This is something that I am really passionate about and love to talk about. It is so much more, right, than currency because money is a matter of belief and behaviors, which are fraught with emotions. We think about shame, fear, pride, control, and more. So, our money relationship sways decisions about our job and much more. And when we sum it all up, it represents more than a tool for life. It's more than just, as I like to say, Maslow's hierarchy or the basics in terms of paying our mortgage, paying our rent. We need money to feed ourselves and to clothe ourselves. The meaning of money is a mindset matter because it revolves around our beliefs. And beliefs drive our behavior, and they in turn create the result that we have with money. Did you know that 85% of women are the CFOs of their family households and making most of the day-to purchasing and budgeting decisions, but they still feel uncomfortable when it comes to discussing financial matters? Did you know that more women than men say money is their number one source of stress? And that's also supported by the American Psychological Association. And did you know that the area where women fall behind the most when it comes to money literacy is knowledge and the confidence to maximize earning and investment power? If we're not maximizing our earning and investment power, that could potentially lead to 80% of women being impoverished in retirement. When we think about financial success starts with our money mindset and our beliefs, our money blocks as well, they're also referred to, can cause us to shrink our perspective about life in terms of working in silos, not making best decisions. It can also actually shrink our IQ. So it's the thing behind the scene that diminishes our confidence and our ability to thrive. No matter how much money you have, money blocks show up in one way or another. And this includes myself. I continue to have to work on money blocks that surface for different life events that occur. No one is immune to this, but the good news is you can work around it. And I'm going to share with you today how you can reprogram your mindset and start winning with well. But what I want to be able to do here is I want to share a little bit about who I am. My name is Sue Diamond, and I welcome you all to our call today. And I'm the founder and CEO of the Her Finance. I've lived in New York for 30 years. I can't believe it's been that long. I'm married and I have an amazing daughter, which is what we always say about our kids, right? And I came over to America over 30 years ago as a counselor with an organization called Camp America. Fast forward to today, I consider myself to be a social change agent who's passionate about women's economic empowerment. And I'm a lover of philosophy, human behavior, especially when it comes to money and achieving big goals. And you, yes, you, I love as much as anything helping women uncover their money mindset or their money narratives and money blocks that are holding them back financially and how they can use this information that we uncover to transform their results with money so they can live their best life. In a nutshell, what I do as a money mindset mentor and coach. Now, I entered the field, the financial field, not as an economist or a financial planner, but as a social worker who was interested in attitudes and behaviors, of course, around money or in terms of reactions to money, specifically the gender of money, and for two reasons. One, because as I paid more attention to this area, I began to discover that many of my friends and colleagues, even as they became more successful, were not talking about money or financial wellness enough, and were often sharing emotions like feeling embarrassed and fearful when mentioning money. Clearly, did not feel comfortable talking about their finances, as there was still this kind of social taboo associated with it. So we have that. We're not talking about our finances. And then on top of that, we're faced with a whole slew of obstacles that are unique to us as women. So to start off with, women think about and experience money differently. And some of the obstacles that we're faced with, the most obvious one is the gender pay gap. And then we have a longer game. And living to a grand old age sounds wonderful. But unfortunately, what comes along with grand old age is disease and disability. We put less money away. I established the Her Finance Club after leaving the finance industry and seeing the real life impacts of how relationships with money can wreak havoc on women emotionally and be a huge source of pressure and stress. What I saw was that no one was really talking about this. And worse than that, many women were afraid to talk to each other about money, to ask questions about financial products that they didn't understand. And they often felt, as I'd mentioned before, the guilt, fear, embarrassment, overwhelm, and shame. And what happens when we experience those feelings, then we have a tendency to ignore or avoid our finances. Part of the problem for women is, unlike men, money talk does not typically happen in our inner circle of friends because it is still considered, as I mentioned, the social taboo. The money taboo keeps us ignorant of better habits, practices, and perspectives, can keep women the low end of the pay. And guess who had this seasoned wisdom? When we don't speak of something, we make it powerful. That was Harry Potter, by the way. I'm on a mission to socialize the idea that it's okay for women to talk about money because knowledge is power. And when that knowledge helps you become more independent, it translates to empowerment. My goal is to inspire 1 million women to start the money conversation, whether it be with spouse, friends, children, or colleagues, and become more connected and less afraid of their money. Because the more you talk about money, the more you can open doors for yourself and for others to do the same. I have spent the last several years researching the kinds of challenges women face around their relationships with money. And I know now that if you don't address your core beliefs about it, you won't be able to get the wealth that you desire. Let's just go to the next slide. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can better see the screen. To achieve our own definition of financial success, there are three parts that are critical: the money mindset, there is money management, and wealth creation. So our mindset is actually the foundation. And that's the critical component in terms of creating wealth and success. Because if we don't have that on par, then it becomes really challenging for us to manage money and create wealth. It's really important that we build a solid foundation, and that involves developing a better relationship with our money, aka understanding our money story. We all know that when you're building a house, in order for it to continue to stand, it needs a foundation. And when we're building the foundation, we need to do excavation work, creating our solid wealth foundation involves doing some excavation work. So, why do we need to understand our relationship with money? And how does it play a role? Well, actually, it plays a unique role in our financial well being. If we have better understanding of it, our life gets better and we become more empowered because you are in control of the money and not the other way around. Just this past week, when I met with a prospective client, she described herself as being the scaredy cat when it comes to dealing with money. And she indicated that she feels overwhelmed and anxious doing anything beyond saving it. And she commented, some guy at Voyage does something with my money, but I couldn't tell you what. And I know I should learn more and be more involved with investing and planning my retirement. But she indicated that she's so bad that she can't even bring herself to read her statements. And she said she just turns them up and assumes everything is going well. And she even made the statement, I wish they wouldn't even send the statements. When we ignore and avoid our money, we give away our financial power. And giving away our financial power leads to emotional and financial instability. I'm going to do a little exercise with you right now. I'm going to ask you to check in and notice what happens as I speak to you. We are now going to take time to start talking about your finances. We are now going to take time to start talking about your finances. I want you to notice your body's response to my statement. What were you feeling as I said, we are now going to take time to start talking about your finances? And I know that this can be kind of difficult, this exercise to dive right into, but really what I'm trying to do here is give you a little sense of it so you can take some time later just to go back and do this so you can fully notice how you feel when you think and talk about your finances. The statement leads to the first emotion that I usually see and find when we're working with our finances. Can anyone guess what the first emotion is that most people have when they come to work on their finances? Put it in the chat box. Okay. Yes. Worry, anxiety, fear, nervous, stress. Yes, these are all really good answers. But what I get from most people when they first come in, 99% of the time, it's fear. I want to share with you that this is good news, believe it or not, because the thing with fear is we can usually count on it to be there, particularly with our finances. And fear is the great reminder because fear says, hey, you feel fear. Don't forget your emotions. When this happens, our rational minds get pushed aside and our emotions tend to dominate. So it's not like we can think our way out of anxiety because our thoughts tend to feed our anxiety. And it's really easy for our mind to lead us from being fearful about the possibility of losing our job, to not being able to pay the mortgage, to being homeless, and to almost sudden death, all in a matter of seconds. And this is our brain's fight or flight response to fear. And of course, this was super useful as we evolved out of the cave and less useful today. We're not going to be eaten by a lion when we walk around the corner, but instead we're worried about money and jobs and relationships. And generally, it's the flight with finance as we tend to shut it down. Here's what I actually want you to do. I want you to do the opposite. I want you to sit with it. I want you to notice if you can sense some fear right now when you're thinking about your finances. I want you to notice where in your body that's coming up. And then I want you to breathe into it make some space and learn about where it is and what it does, what it feels like. If you can check in how you feel when engaging in any behavior involving money, I want you to ask yourself, does looking at your checkbook cause your heart to race? Does it make you feel nauseous? Do you feel sick in your stomach? Do you have a headache? Do you find yourself comparing your financial situation to that of others? How do you feel when this happens? Where in your body do you feel this? So, and I know this is hard, but I want you to try to be there with it for 2 minutes and notice what you say to yourself about money. What are you afraid of? For example, are you telling yourself, I can't do this, or I never learned about personal finance, or I'm not good with numbers, or I'm a failure with money and will never be able to figure this out? And of course, the list goes on. I want you to then ask yourself, what is most important so I can take a proactive step forward? And by identifying what you have control over, your brain actually shifts out of a reactionary mode and into a problem solving mode. And this switch is instrumental because it enables you to feel powerful rather than helpless. You might have heard the expression, awareness is 80% of the battle, and that's true. And I would actually add that the present is the other 20%. So this exercise, and I want you to do this later when you've got some time. What it does is it's knowing how and where the fear shows up in our body alerts us to our stress. That allows us to take control of that so we can help reduce our stress and our anxiety. And you can actually elicit the help of your emotions for some guidance here. What I mean by that is make a list of what really scares you about finances. And that's your top priority because most of us are not controlling what we think. When we are in touch with ourselves, we begin to see our actions, or I should say our reactions, for what they are, that fear based. They're not necessarily real, and recognize that they're not permanent and that they will pass. Our beliefs and emotions, I like to call them hitchhikers. They hitchhike on our money story. And that's what creates money blocks and our self sabotage behavior. So I'm here to share with you as women, we can shape the 21st century by accepting the power and responsibility associated with money. And we want this for our daughters and granddaughters and other young women that we know so they can overcome those obstacles that I mentioned earlier that are unique to women. I want my glass ceiling to be my daughters and other young women's floor. But it starts with our money mindset. That leads me to our next slide. Money actually speaks two languages. The language of basic is the first, adding up and subtraction. You have it, you utilize it, you make use of it, and you save it. And then there's the secret language of money, which is our habits of employing money to manage our moods and self esteem, as well as a tool for control and competition. Money is layered with connotations that frequently conflict. So when we look at this slide, what do we see? It's a financial checkup. The most significant thing that I have learned is that many decisions, as we go through your little checklist, are always symptomatic of a belief system. And to say it another way, our money mindset drives all our financial decisions, which makes and creates the results that we have. You may be thinking to yourself, I don't feel comfortable talking about finance because it is socially accepted. unpredictable. Or you might think money management is difficult, perplexing, and stressful. Or you might tell yourself you have to be good at to invest. Or you think that you're okay with money and you brush it under the rug. Or you tell yourself, well, I don't have to worry about money because my spouse handles everything. And I'm also willing to bet if you experience a scarcity mindset, one of these things is true. Oh, if I had more money, I wouldn't have a problem. I work hard. I deserve that new designer handbag. I'll never be able to pay this debt off. I can't earn enough to get ahead. I need X amount of dollars to have peace of mind. Or spending money on things for yourself is selfish, or money is the root of all evil. I get it. I understand why you think or feel this way. Many of us get so caught up on what our mind tells us about money, and our belief that we aren't capable prevents us from achieving financial success. Our relationship with money is about how we feel about ourselves and our money, which again creates our mindset. Our behaviors in turn determine our financial circumstances. So we've already established that money can elicit a whole slew of feelings, emotions, shame, pride, guilt, stress, and more. Often than not, these feelings about money stem from our childhood. And that all starts with our money story. Everyone has a money story. And how well do you know yours? A money story is a personal narrative about our money, and it makes up your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings about money, which in turn, as I've mentioned, affects your financial behavior. Many stories can be generational. The factors that influence our money stories are typically caregivers that are parents and grandparents. And as you can see from the slide, we can see that everyone has a preconceived notion of money. And as children, we picked a lot of that up from our early childhood. Some of the things that might be beliefs, it takes money to make money, or there's no need to save for an emergency fund. I'll worry about that in the future. Let me go to the next slide. As I'd mentioned earlier, money represents much more than a tool for life. It's easy to give money a lot of power in your life. Your money story can affect your finances more than you think it does. It might affect you when you're trying to decide how much to spend on a car, or it can determine whether you buy a house and how much you spend. It sways your decisions about your job and your income, and it also influences how you handle finances in your relationships. Not only do we have our own unique money story, which, is a challenge, but then when we have a partner who has their own unique money story, and then we have to be able to maneuver and understand one another's money stories. So as an example, let's say you experienced trauma or unhappiness as a child. This unhappiness stemmed from parents maybe fighting about their finances. The story you may have picked up was that, oh, lack of money was a problem in your family. And in your child's mind, you infer that if your family only had money, the difficulties and unhappiness would go away. So in an attempt to avoid the same problem in your adult life, maybe you strive to accumulate more and more cash, or you seek to complete control over the finances in your relationship, or perhaps you go in the opposite direction and just don't want to deal with money since it's been a source of pain from your past. For many, a scarcity mindset about money or a feeling that there is never enough is very common. So don't feel you're on your own there. Sometimes even when there is more money coming, it never feels like there's enough. And most of us can look back on our childhoods and see how our mindset is formed. So, once upon a time, there was a young woman who grew up in rural Ireland, and she grew up on a farm, and there was very little money. So, in order to survive, they grew crops, which they were able to sell and feed themselves with. And they had wild stock, they had chickens and cows. Clothing was handmade. If you were able to buy something, then it really had to last for years. Fast forward at 18, she traveled from Ireland over to England, got married, had a successful career, and lived as a working middle class family. That woman was my mother. She's 85 now. And to this day, still carries money blocks, certain money beliefs that have a negative impact. I'll give you an example. She lives in the UK. I talked to her on FaceTime. She has an iPad. During the summer, she had a woolly jumper, cardigan, sweater on, and she was mentioning that the weather wasn't so nice and it was pretty cold. And I had said to her, "Well, you do have the heat on." And her response to that was, "Heat in the middle of the summer? I'm not putting the heat on." So, although this was great when you think of being cost effective and taking the environment into consideration, this was actually detrimental to her health. Although she layered up, but she was cold and she couldn't put the heat on because she couldn't bring herself to pay for heat in summer. Fast forward to me, we grew up hearing money doesn't grow on trees. And what am I? Barclays Bank. Sure, some people are familiar with that. So uh, she continually, throughout her lifetime and to this day, fends frugally. And that came to clothes. She would rather make our clothes as we were growing up rather than spend the money on them. And again, it was more about mindset. Of course, for me, not like today with Etsy, but if you were wearing handmade clothes, that applied. You couldn't afford to buy clothes. And then there was shame associated with that and a focus on what other people thought. As soon as I turned 13, I got a job because I had that scarcity mindset. And I thought, you get a job, start earning my own money, and then I can start buying clothes for myself. But what didn't leave me was that mindset of the sales shopping. So I'm a big Bartles or TJ Maxx shopper. So how I justify spending money on myself is, oh, wow, well, if I bought it at the designer, this is the price I would have paid because it's on all the tags. And look how much I'm saving. So I still have that. I can't pay the full price for something because I feel really guilty. But when it comes to thinking about paying our bills and owning a home and buying a car and work and income and all those other money related decisions, how do you think your financial script has affected those decisions? What's important here is the past doesn't dictate the future. If your past money story isn't benefiting you, you create a new vision and build habits to support your unique story. No one ever achieves ultimate financial success without first working on their relationship with money. And that's no matter how good their money system or their wealth growth knowledge. You have to take a look at this first to know what's working and what isn't working. I always like to share my favorite three-legged stool analogy, which is in regards to financial stability and confidence. And it's based on three critical components, which I mentioned at the beginning: mindset, which is our foundation, money management, and wealth building. I want you to ask yourself, how many legs are supporting your financial success? Because if you don't have all three, you'll be charmed out of your wealthiest self faster than you can fall off a two-legged stool. I hope you will join me and allow me to support you in your journey. So look forward to staying connected and talking with you soon. Have a wonderful rest of the day.